As Rangers fans, we know that a goaltender is the backbone of a hockey team. At Abundant Wealth Management, we are your financial backbone, offering financial planning, wealth management, tax planning, and estate planning services. To schedule your free consultation, head to www.abundant-wealth.com. That's www.abundant-wealth.com. Abundant Wealth Management. Live, plan, triumph.
You're listening to Rangers Radio, your home for end-to-end coverage of the New York Rangers. With your hosts, Brendan Azoff, Zach Domino, and Steve Pappas. Blue Shirts fans, the puck drops now.
Welcome to a Sunday edition of Rangers Radio. I'm Brendan Azoff. With me, as always, Stephen Pappas. We got Zook, of course, down there in his Steelers gear. He's ready for Sunday football. So, we're going to make this short and sweet. We got a lot to talk about, obviously, with the way the Rangers have played. And I think before we talk about the 4-game West Coast trip that's coming up starting tonight in Seattle, and before we talk about their play and the defense and all of that, we got to kick things off with the Filip Chytil injury. I mean, we kind of all knew it was inevitable, but it hurts nonetheless because of how well he's been playing so far this season.
It was the first time Keandre Miller's thrown a hit all season.
Yeah, it
was on his own guy.
And I was there, and it looked like it was in slow motion. And then all of a sudden, he just wasn't getting up. And I was like, it wasn't a rattling hit.
You watch that back, and he clearly gets something up high. And
yeah, I'm just hoping shoulder.
Yeah, it wasn't a hard enough hit to be down that much for that long. But if you have a history of concussions the same way that Filip Chytil has, then, that's the first thing you think about. And, they're not going to come out and say it's a concussion because the NHL injury system is
awful.
Awful. It's upper body, lower body. It could be literally anything. But I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that, it's something to do with his lingering concussion issues. He looked, wobbly and dazed when he was trying to get up. This guy can't catch a break. At some point, if someone's injury prone, you feel like it gets to be on them, but concussions are such a finicky thing that, and this is such a freak incident where your own teammate runs into you. I talked about it a lot last year, especially during the playoffs and especially when he came back, that this is not something that you take lightly. This isn't something that, you just try and push through, concussions and multiple concussions the way Chytil has had are damaging for long-term effects after hockey. And this kid's 23, 22?
Yeah, he's still so young.
He's had all these concussions and he's only, such a young player. You hate to see it. And, I'll talk about the fact that, he's been their best player, this and that. It's going to be bad for him to not be in the lineup. But realistically, I could care less about that aspect of it and more along the lines of this kid has had so many concussions. It's almost not worth it at this point. It's almost not worth the long-term effects of what these head injuries do down the line. It's up to him. It's up to him. It's up to the doctors. But, and again, this is sort of kind of speculation, but I feel like, you can see the writing on the wall with that injury. It just sucks, man. I hate that this keeps happening to him.
Yeah. And regardless of the health side of it, which is obviously the most important side, but the side of it, a lot of times with him that's talked about the most, the dude, like you said, has probably been our best player this year. Look at that plus 11. That's tied for 14th in the league. And it's not like he's playing on a first or second line with dominant wings next to him. A lot of that has to do with his play on both sides of the puck, offensively and defensively. So when you just talk about the Rangers and take what type of injury could potentially be out of it and just look at the fact that we're losing a great player in a vacuum, this is a really, really, really tough loss, especially from what me and Steven were talking a little bit about last episode on Thursday, that our center play has been lacking a little bit besides Filip Chytil. So this is definitely, I'm not going to say definitely, but probably one of the 2 or 3 guys that the Rangers really can't afford to lose at this point. 90% because of who he is, but 10% because who we're bringing up. We brought up Jake Lowe, whatever, and we got to shuffle our lines now. And this is going to be a real problem for the Rangers, especially. I know Steve keeps tweeting it and talking about it. The schedule that's coming up in November and December. This is not the time to lose a player like this.
Dude, it's so. If you wanna pull up the tweet I just had, like their schedule at the
not
end.
logged into Twitter on this computer, so I can't search tweets, which sucks.
I'll send it to you. The schedule at the end of December is just it's miserable. Like and you know, obviously you have to play these teams just because you know it's the nature of the beast. This is just the NHL schedule, but for those that haven't seen it, the back half of December, right? The Rangers go on the road 6 of 7 with the Christmas break in between against St. Louis, who's not half bad. They've got some good players against the Nashville team that should be good with a bunch of star players that they got over the summer. At the Dallas Stars, who are a Stanley Cup contender. Then you have a back-to-back, one game at home against Carolina, the Devils, who look really, really good right now. And, you can say it's a road game, home game, whatever. You're not playing at MSG, so it's a road game. Then you have the Christmas break, and then you go play Tampa, who's on fire at the moment. And then you go play Florida, who's had your number for now, a year? And that's Merry Christmas for Ranger fans. That's going to be a fun time to sit and watch through those games. It's bad enough that it's 6 of 7 on the road with a Christmas break in between, but the teams that you're playing, that's a gauntlet of teams.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, back to Philip Edel, it's the same thing. It's like, I've said it numerous times that when he's healthy, he's the purest skater on this team. And I think that for a team that has looked lethargic, that's the best word I could use to describe them. He's the one guy that's constantly flying up the ice. He's a one-man breakout. And outside of Artemi Panarin, he was that other guy. And I think that right now, losing him, especially with the way that they've played the last 6-7 games, is very tough. And then you look at that schedule, and I know we talked about it in our chat, but I do think that they up their game when they play good teams and they drop their game when they play bad teams. So I'm not as concerned about that stretch. I think it's finally a time to have it, and I think that they need to start playing more consistent hockey, and not just with their play, but with the scheduling itself. It's been, you play once, have 2 nights off, you're playing crappy teams, then you're expected to show up against a good team after a layoff. So it's time to get into the ebb and flow of the season and start to see a gauntlet like that, because that might wake them up. And if they go, 0-3 in their first 3 games of that road trip there against St. Louis, Nashville, Dallas, that might be something that's good for them, because right now it's like, okay, we win 1, lose 1, win 1, and you can never really get the feel that something's going wrong, even though by the eye test, we all know they're playing poorly.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the standings now because, as it tends to go with Ranger fans, we always act like we're always the worst team in the league, and then you look at it, and we're still right there. So like we're all kind of saying, that December trip or December stretch of games is of utmost importance, not just for the Rangers in a vacuum, but relative to the rest of the league. Because me and Steve were talking about it on Thursday. It's not like this team is top 3 in the Metro and is sitting pretty like last year, but it's also not like we're the Penguins or the Red Wings and like absolutely done with this year. So, it's an interesting time because the Rangers have to figure things out. And we thought they were going to be able to do that during the season because they maybe would be somewhere closer to the top of the Metro division. But they got to do that while also picking up points at this point, because it's not like they're way ahead of a lot of teams or way ahead of the playoff wildcard cutoff line. So during this stretch, losing a player like Hedel, having to work players in, Laviolette still not set on his lines, and going through that gauntlet, we better hope, Brendan, that this team figures it out when they play this good competition, right? Because we could be sitting here at the end of December and we could be where the Flyers or the Islanders are. And that would be, all hell would break loose if we turn the calendar and the Rangers weren't sitting in a playoff spot.
Yeah, they have the fewest games played in the league. They're the only team with 15 games played.
Yeah, that's another thing.
They play their 16th tonight, but you look at the other teams in their division, right? And Carolina and Washington right now are the 2 best teams in the division. Devils have played significantly better as of late. They swept the Florida Panthers, but they've played 21 games. They've played
so many games.
6 more games than the New York Rangers, and they're 5 points ahead of them. So when you look at the standings, you see the Devils in first place. The reality is that point percentage-wise is probably a better way to look at things right now. So the Devils are really the 4th place team in the league, in the division, excuse me. But there has to be some consistency in their play, and it's hard to get that consistency when you're laying off constantly. And they're 5-1 on the road, so the road stretch doesn't seem to really bother them. And I think they play better on the road because they simplify their game. But they're only 5-3-1 at home, and we talked about that 3 weeks ago when we had the Florida Panthers coming into MSG, and I was like, let's make MSG a tough place to play again. And they haven't really done that. I mean, San Jose dictated play the other night for the first period. The Rangers kind of took that over in the second and third, but that's a game where you should come out and not be flat. You shouldn't be down 1-0 to San Jose at home. And it's just a continuous cycle of they come out flat, they're chasing games, and it's hard to chase games when you're giving up chance after chance. And especially the last 3 to 4 starts, Igor hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been Igor. And it's forced them to start losing games, because when they were beating the teams like the Islanders and they beat Ottawa, that back-to-back stretch there, those are the last 2 consecutive wins they had. They didn't play overly well, but Igor played overly well. And now that that's not necessarily occurring at the same rate as it was early in the year, you're seeing them get exposed. And this is what we talked about in the offseason since day one. And yet every single year, it's the same story again.
Do you want to hear something nuts?
I love nuts things.
So the Rangers have 10 wins this year, right? How many of them have come against teams over 500?
Oh, I would have to look at the standings.
Yeah.
I want to say 2 or 3.
One.
Okay.
One singular win against a team over 500. It was the Toronto Maple Leafs. Every other win they have is a team at 500 or worse. And they're 1-3 against teams that are over 500 this year. I mean, I heard Larry Brooks talk about the lack of, strength of schedule that they've had, this, malign start to their schedule. They should be 10-4-1 or whatever they are right now, because they played shitty teams. Like, this shouldn't be like, again, I will harp on this all season because I've talked about it at least a couple times already this year. I don't care about wins and losses to a degree. It's how you're playing. It's the structure. It is, what you look like when you're out there. Are you a team that does the right things? Are you a team that plays the game the right way? And right now, despite being 10-4-1, the Rangers don't play the game the right way. They don't play defense. They don't, they don't defend the rush. They don't defend in their own zone. They can't get the puck out of their own zone. Any sort of pressure just absolutely buckles them. They have no clue how to defend pressure. They have no clue how on the power play to attack pressure, right? That's one of the biggest things that we said during the playoffs against Florida last year and to an extent against Carolina. And a lot of times this year is when their power play is bad, it's because they're getting pressured. And I have no idea what it is about this team and pressure, but it just doesn't handle them very well. So, they're 1-3 against teams over 500. They have 1 win against a team that's over 500 this year. The rest of their wins, all 9 of them have come against teams at 500 or below. So for the people that just sit here and look at records, I said it on Thursday, just critically think for half a second, like, just please, for the love of God, like, use more than 1% of your brain or 0.5% of your brain and physically watch this team play hockey. It's not. I saw a tweet that was like, this team's just boring. They look like, they're boring. They don't look like they have fun. They don't look like they're enjoying themselves. It's not like fun to watch. Like, I'll always say this year's Mets team, like, it was fun to watch, win or lose. It was fun to watch every single game. This Rangers team right now, it is just so not fun to watch. And I'm going to watch because I love the team. I love, rooting for this team, but it's so painfully unfun to watch.
It's so unfun to watch. And like, I'm sitting here now thinking, like, it's so interesting how when they're on like the penalty kill, something clicks, right? Like, if they had that mentality during the rest of the game, like, they're always on their spots on the penalty kill. They have defensive structure. Their offense flows better when they're on the penalty kill. It's like, I don't know what type of mentality is in their minds when they're killing those penalties, but they almost need that. Now. What?
They're on the defensive side of the puck because you have to be. When you're on the penalty kill, you start on the faceoff starts in your end, and you're naturally on the defensive side of the puck. And when the Rangers play 5-on-5 and they actually all come back and play defensive hockey, we see how good they are. You just have to look at the first 5 games. But now, if you watch, and I can guarantee you it's going to happen tonight numerous times, because you don't just snap out of the funk that you're in like that. And they're playing the Kraken tonight, who after their win against the Islanders yesterday, are above 500. So this is one of those wins that you can get against a team that's technically above 500 and on a back-to-back. So you really should handle them. But when they have the puck, and you could just, let's say Fox has the puck in his own end, there are 3 forwards that fly the zone. It is just an immediate, let's fly the zone and try to get on the rush without any pass having made. You got to be at your positions. And I can't tell you how many times the defense get pressured and they try to go where the outlet should be, and the forward is getting beat by the defenseman or just plain not there. And that's when all of a sudden these long shifts go, and you could start blaming the defense because, oh, they're not covering their guys. Well, they're not covering the guys because they're outnumbered in their own end because the forwards are God knows where. And when they're on the penalty kill, it's the exact opposite. They break out in a cohesive unit, and that's why they look so good. And it's just simple stuff where I can guarantee you the coaches are telling them this, but it's just the instinct in their head is let's go offense, let's go offense, let's go offense. And it's hurting them. Play 5 men deep in your own end, limit your offensive production to 2 to 3 goals a night, but only give up 1, and you're still going to win the game. Same exact points that you get if you win 5-4. And it has to be that type of mentality because the goals will come from that.
Yeah, and they got to buy into that defensive style and rushing in cohesion, and it should be kind of obvious to them because it works so flawlessly when they are on this penalty kill, and when they're not, like you're saying, it just completely goes to the side, goes to the wayward. They're just not playing that style. There's no outlets. Everyone's just running the other way. But yeah, and it's like even when they try and play defense, it's like it's not intelligent. They're taking themselves out of the play to try and make a play. Me and Steve were talking about the Keandre Miller slide, where he just totally took himself out of the play, trying to make a heroic play. Some of these guys almost got to try and do less at some times and just pick their spot, find that spot, and stay in that structure. I don't know if it's that they don't trust the guy next to them or the guy in front of them, but I don't know what's going on the defensive end at all because it just looks like 5 skaters playing amongst themselves.
Yeah. I mean, listen, to play devil's advocate here, it's November 17th. Like, they've played 14 games. They have, I'm not great at math, it's what, 60 something games left. Am I right in that?
Right now they have 67 games.
67.
66 because tonight's their 16.
I'm a journalist. I don't do math very well. But either way, there are so many more games ahead of them than there are behind them. And if this was the trend, I mean, think about where we were at in, January, early February last year, where Shesterkin couldn't make a save if his life depended on it. We were playing the same defense that they're playing now. The power play struggled. They couldn't keep the puck out of their own net. They couldn't put the puck in their own net. They looked lazy. And then all of a sudden they found it, turned it on, and, the rest is history. They won a President's Trophy. So, it's not like the Stanley Cup is won in November. I just want to pull up this chart just to take a look at just a visual representation of kind of what we're talking about, of how defensively inept this team has been this year. Like, they're so good offensively. Like, there's only one other team that is better than them at creating chances. It's the Carolina Hurricanes, who are notoriously good at creating chances. There's one team in the National Hockey League that is better than them at creating chances at 5-on-5 right now, but their defense is just abysmal. 4th worst behind Pittsburgh, who sucks, Montreal, who sucks, Anaheim, who sucks, San Jose, who sucks, right? Like, there's a theme there. They're not good teams that don't play defense. And the Rangers are a good team. They just, if they can get, so let's just say right now they're playing at like 20% defense at the moment. If they can just get it to 50, if they could not even at their full potential, 50% of their potential, they're such a better team. But right now it's just a team defense that looks lost. They look, not on the same page. And if there's a time to do it, it's now. It's November. So this West Coast road trip, this Western Canada trip, I know Seattle's United States, whatever. But this West Coast road trip that they're about to go on is exactly what sparked him at the early onset of last season when they went 5-0. And I'm not expecting them to go 5-0 again during this West Coast trip. But if you come out of here 4-1, 3-0, or 3-1-1?
They only play 4 because
they only play 4.
for some reason they don't play Winnipeg on this trip.
That's just
So they're gonna have to go back out and play Winnipeg when they play the California teams, I guess. But to kind of piggyback, and I'll before I didn't mean to cut you off, but to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, the positive is, like you said, they're creating their chances. The defense just has been bad, and it is early on. And this team, and it's not just a Rangers thing. Every team is going to go through a stretch. Listen, Winnipeg was 15-1. They've now lost 2 in a row. They're going to come back down to earth. There's a reason that nobody goes like 75-7, right? It just doesn't happen. So teams are going to have their stretch, and you could look at it as, okay, there's the same bad habits formulating, or you could look at it as they've had their stretch in their easiest part of their schedule, and they're 10-4-1. So maybe now they'll pick up their play and play the way we know they can when the games start to get more serious. But the irony of this chart, which is not lost on me, and it's not lost on anyone that's listened to the first 10, 15 minutes of this episode, because we've talked about it, is we're all saying how boring the games are. But when you're that good offensively and that bad defensively, the game should be entertaining at least. Like, it should be back and forth, nonstop action, like a 3-on-3 overtime. But it's not, because they're just getting hemmed in, and they can only have 12, 15 shots a game. And they're out of those 12 to 15 shots, 5 to 7 of them are going to be high danger chances, because that's the way the Rangers play. So the numbers, even though they look like they should be an entertaining game, it hasn't been that way because of how lethargic they look. And even when they look really bad, they still create. And I think that it's infuriating to watch, because we know how much talent is on the team, and we know how good they are when they play the right way. And you see it every year in stretches, right? The 5 to 6 games to start the year where they were dominant. Look at that first game against Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh's bad, but Pittsburgh's not getting beat 6-0 every night, and the Rangers were dominant. And then how do you go from that play style and how good that must have felt to start the year to what we are seeing now in the last 2-3 weeks? It doesn't make sense how this group, that's pretty much all veterans at this point, can't correlate the good feelings versus the bad ones and realize what's going wrong and correct it. Because it's not a 2-game set now. We're at like 7 to 8 games where they've been mediocre at best every night.
You're right. The Penguins don't lose games 6-0 anymore. They lose first period 6-0 at this point. It's gotten that bad. Yeah,
and that's against another good team in Dallas, who's had their struggles as well. So it's not, teams don't just come out like Winnipeg 15-1, and that was the best record to start the year in NHL history for a reason. The Rangers are still 10-4-1, but there's so many players that you could check that you want to see more from. There usually, when you have a team that's 10-4-1, there's 2 or 3 guys that you're like, they've been over exceeding. Everybody else is at their expectations, and there's maybe 1 or 2 that are underperforming. The Rangers are 10-4-1, and I think there's 1 to 2 guys that have outpaced expectations, and everybody else is at or below where we expected them to be, and that's a problem, because this team could literally be 15-0 if everybody was playing the way they should be, but they're not, and that's hockey. But that's also the synonym for the Rangers, is just mediocre players at certain times, or good players playing mediocre hockey way too often.
Yeah, and looking at this chart again, if they start playing better defense, it doesn't only shift them to the right, it will also shift them up more towards Carolina, because then we'll just have more opportunities. Correct. Think how few of times we just have the puck for stretches of games because we're just hemmed into our own zone. So not only will playing defense help us, move to the right of this chart, we'll go more towards Carolina, because I would have to think, just looking at Carolina and looking at Washington with the, what their defensive metrics say, they're having more opportunities on offense to create these chances. We see with how few times we sometimes have the puck, it's like you look at this chart and we're surprised. Like you were saying, Brendan, you would think the games would be exciting. Like somehow the Rangers are finding these opportunities without having the puck for long stretches throughout the game. If they can really just find themselves defensively, it will help the game as a whole. And I don't know what it has to, it's a complete opposite of what they had going on last year, because last year that's what we were applauding them for. That was kind of their backbone, and that was their thing. When all else was going wrong, they always fell back into that defensive structure that allowed them to win those 2-1 games or 1-0 games where goalies could win for them, because at least they were helping him out in front of him when they were creating nothing. But this year, it's just like, man, I'm going into every game almost expecting to have to win a shootout, which is not a place we've been with the Rangers in, I don't know, maybe my whole life.
There was a stretch of time last year where one of the hardest things to do in the sport of hockey was get through the neutral zone against the Rangers because
Yeah.
they gapped up perfectly. They defended their own blue line. If you were getting into the zone, you'd have to dump it behind them and go chase and pressure them. And that was the only way that you'd be able to succeed. Now you're able to carry the puck over the blue line through the neutral zone
With ease.
or dump it past them and go in and pressure them and get it. So there's multiple ways that they're getting beat into their own zone and, you know, not being able to get the puck out of your own zone. And this really started last year in the postseason against Florida. I mean, we saw them, you know, try and flip pucks out against Florida and just never be able to get it past the blue line for some reason. And it's kind of crept into their game and has stayed through the first 15 games so far this year. But I had sent something else as well. If you could pull that chart up. You know, Zook, you and I talked about the great equalizer last episode. This is the great equalizer. This is why they're 10-4-1. And I understand that Shesterkin hasn't played particularly well over the last couple of games, but they're still one of the best teams, top to bottom, between the pipes. And for as many chances as they give up, their goaltenders are making those saves. So, you know, there are 6 guys on the ice at every time that you're out there, and you need 6 guys to be playing cohesively. And if they're not, you need the one guy between the pipes to bail you out. And right now, Shesterkin, you know, is a little behind schedule, but overall, he's been saving their bacon for most of the year.
I'm going to nerd out. I'm going to nerd out really quick because, you know, you mentioned how tough it was to get through the neutral zone against them. And it's something that I've seen. And the reason I like to go to games in person, obviously I'm a fan. It's always fun to be at MSG, but you could see a lot more from being there than you can just from the camera angle on TV. And what I want people to watch, and you can watch it tonight because it happens. Every team is victim to this in a game. And that's because you're playing other professional athletes, right? Every team that you're playing, no matter how bad they are, still professional players. They can make you look bad. K'Andre Miller, for example, he has very, very elite offensive instincts for a defenseman. And that's because he was a forward primarily in his career before he went to college. When you watch him play defense, there's 2 areas, and we call them the gray areas. It's both blue lines, right? 5 to 6 feet on either side of the blue line. Those are gray areas where if you get beat, the odds are the chances are going the other way as an odd man rush. K'Andre Miller gives up the blue line or holds the blue line at the wrong times. And when I watch him play, if he has a poor gap, he keeps himself flat-footed. And this is a dude that when he pivots has such a long reach and long stride that he should not be getting beat by any forward because of how athletic he is. But because his feet are not moving, he gets beat. And when you watch the centers or the wingers that are backtracking, they don't support that lane properly enough. And you're seeing odd man rush after odd man rush in transition because of that. And I'm just picking on K'Andre Miller here, but you can look at any of the defensemen. When they're pinching or they're trying to step up in the neutral zone, there's no forward support backtracking, and they are giving up odd man rush after odd man rush. And the onus is on both sides here because the forwards have to get back, but the defense and their gaps have to be smarter. And I would not mind limiting some of the offensive push and offensive step-ups if it meant that these guys are playing safer gaps right now. And when I say safer gaps, Jacob Trouba likes to backskate into Shesterkin when he's playing defense. That's not a good gap at all either. But don't get beat in the red line and have a 3-on-1 coming the other way because you made a bad step and because you were flat-footed. There's got to be a 5-foot gap. You got to be stick on stick and not just stick checking. It's got to be stick on stick through the body and eliminate the rush. And right now they're failing to do that. I think the only one that's not failing to do that is Adam Fox at times. And people are like, oh, he's having a down year. He's having a down year because he's been playing with people that are all having down years. And I think that Adam Fox is kind of a victim of the other guys around him. And when he puts a puck up to the wall and the forward catches the pass, every defenseman naturally goes to sleep a little bit because you're expecting your other forward to get the puck out of the zone, not turn it back over and it's a 2-on-1 in front of you again. So just look at the gaps. You could watch it against Seattle tonight because Seattle does have players that could push the pace. And if you're getting caught flat-footed, it's going to be 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s the other way. And don't be surprised when you're losing games or looking sluggish. It all is the simple things. It's not anything complicated that these guys have to figure out or do. It's all simple things that they've done before in their careers that as a collective unit is going wrong at the same time. And that's what they're going to have to correct.
I'm glad you mentioned going to games and watching. And one of my favorite things to do, because on Thursday while you were at the Ranger game, I was in Buffalo watching the Sabres and Blues. Pavel Buchnevich scored in that game. That was funny. The Rangers were losing 1-0 at that point, so that really stung. But whenever I go to games, and it's not just because it's the cheapest ticket, but if you sit as high as humanly possible in the arena, I think, in my opinion, it is so much better than sitting down near the ice. Like, you get the speed down near the ice and everything like that, but you can truly appreciate how technical, how well these guys move together. And it's not like Buffalo and St. Louis are these two outstanding teams. Like, they're good teams, they're average teams, but the cohesion of breaking out of your own zone, of starting the rush, of getting back on defense, of the goaltenders' movements, you appreciate that so much more the higher you sit up in the arena. And I will always advocate for, if you're somebody that is trying to learn hockey, if you're someone that just likes the sport and wants to get into kind of like that, I don't want to call it analytical, but like in your mind, like, critical thinking aspect of the game, as opposed to just watching and seeing the score, go to games and sit up as high as possible. And I understand that most people that are probably watching this show at the moment live in the New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut area, where if you want to go to a game, it's $150 at MSG is the cheapest ticket. But if you get the chance to go to an Islander game or a Devils game, right? Like, I like going to games where my team's not playing in it, just because I can appreciate what's going on, as opposed to worrying about, all right, what's the score? What are we doing here? So like, if you want to get into that kind of mindset and go to games where your team's not playing, if you can do that, and sit up as high as possible and just sit there and watch. Don't look at your phone. Don't, do dumb shit. Just watch the game.
There's a reason the press box and the scratch house is always up, right?
Yeah.
Because these guys are watching it from that aerial view to see what's going on. And hockey, when you're sitting at the glass, is awesome, right? Especially if you're a casual fan. But, like Python said, Ranger Central down here, if you're a real hockey fan, you sit high. You could kind of piece together everything. And when I played, it was ingrained into every defenseman's head that if you're going to step, you need forward support to do that. And if you're not going to step and you're going to back out of the zone, you have to make sure that gap is sustained. They have to dump that puck in, because if they're carrying it through and over your blue line, that is when the other team gets those opportunities. They can't possess the puck through your blue line if you're giving up the opposing blue line. And this is where I wish we had like something to draw, because I could show you guys what I'm talking about. I know it's hard to follow.
Let's get the budget. Let's get the budget up. What are we doing?
We got to get. I know, like, there's a whiteboard on Zoom. I don't know if we got that here, but my artistic skills are lacking as well. But there's a lot of little areas in the ice, and I know the ice looks big when you're sitting there, but you could break down the ice surface into different zones that all create opportunities. And every NHL game, those are the same areas of the ice that create the opportunities that lead to goals. And, Zook, you mentioned the penalty kill, right? How many times has right inside the blue line, the Rangers strip a puck and they're going the other way, and that's when Kreider scores? Those are the areas of the ice that you have to win. You have to win the blue lines, and you have to win the area in front of the net. And the Rangers are not winning the blue lines right now. And that is why you see all these odd man rushes. It's not because, they're playing poorly. It's because they're making poor reads. And I
did it. Microsoft Paint.
This is great. Yep. This is great audio podcasting.
This is what the Rangers defense looks like right now to me.
Yes. And that it is what it is. It's all circles. Like, if you ever go to a practice and you watch a coach draw it up, by the end of the time they're drawing up the drill or drawing up what your scheme is supposed to be, it looks exactly like what you just had on the screen. It's all gibberish, but the curls, where you're supposed to be. And right now, when the Rangers forwards are coming back or getting caught below the goal line, 3 men below the goal line, that's happened a lot with the Smith, Kreider, Zibanejad line, which is a cardinal sin of hockey. You cannot have 3 forwards caught below the goal line without the puck. It's just it's peewee hockey things that they're making mistakes on right now, and it's costing them. And it's easy to clean up, but for some reason, the Rangers are making it a lot more challenging than it has to be.
All right. Again, for some reason, I have to be the positive voice, which is not a good sign. But the Rangers did win. They got two guys that desperately needed to get on the scoreboard, scoreboard against San Jose in Mika and Vincent Trocheck. Just you saw the relief on Mika's face when he scored that. It was good to see that, sort of weight get lifted off of his shoulders. We've talked about, the mental aspect with him, even before Larry Brooks talked to him a couple days ago, and he acknowledged that mentally this is just such a tough time for him right now. Trocheck we've heard less of, but still struggling. His fourth goal of the year. Mika's only third. First goal, I believe, since October 22nd for Mika. But, I've mentioned this in the past where it's like Mika's a guy where one can lead to 10. And that's got to be what you're hoping for. There's too many people. Again, I'll say it over and over again because I keep seeing it. Too many people that don't root for their own guys and just want to drag them through the mud when things are going poorly and lift them up when things are going well. That's kind of what's happening with Mika. If you're not hoping that goal sparks some level of, increase in play for Mika, then, I don't know what to tell you. This is a guy that is so easy to root for. He's such a great guy. Like, he's been nothing but good since he's been on this team. He's been nothing but good since he's been in this organization. I'll never understand the blind hate that he gets. Obviously you want production out of your top line center. I get it. But I mean, I'll always say the hate that this guy gets is completely unfair.
Well, now he's going to be under more of a microscope, because if Hedl is out for any extended period of time, it's not only that we're hoping that goal sparks something, it's necessary.
Yep.
And you know what? Something. I believe it can, because you know why? He's shown that it has in the past. Like I said it last week or Wednesday, Thursday, whenever our last show was. Jesus, we don't do these two shows very often. I can't keep up. But I said it where, Mika, I lost my thought now. Shit. Somebody pick up for me. I lost my thought.
I'll jump in because it's not. I don't think it's like blind hate necessarily from at least us. I can't speak for other people. I think we know how good he could be. But the -5 is really telling to me because you look at his plus minus throughout the years. That's rarely where he's been when the Rangers are good. But it's all mental. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I don't think it definitely wasn't Thursday because I wasn't on that show. So it must have been either last week or 2 weeks ago where we said, is it injury or is it mental? And I think it's all mental because it's not like, if you had a broken foot and you're playing through that, I could understand the stride being messed up, but the way he's receiving passes, the stick handling where the puck's just bouncing off his stick, that's all trying to do too much at once in your head. It's a completely mental thing that he's going through right now. And it's crazy to me because, at least from my perspective, the best way to snap out of that and not overthink when you're handling the puck is just rip the puck on goal, which used to be his bread and butter. Whenever he gets the puck in the offensive zone, just rip the puck, man. And if he starts doing that and people start to sag off and he has a little bit more time to make the passes, that's when Mika's advantage, I guess, gets creative and gets the way that we remember him. So every time he gets the puck inside the blue line and has a lane, I just want to see him rip it. He's been way too, pass first for the last 2 years. And teams are keying on that. They're not even covering him because they know that he's going to overstick handle and fumble the puck, and then they can pounce on that. And if he starts to get over the blue line and rip the puck, even if it's 2 shots from the distance that go or easy saves, the defenseman next time he comes over is going to naturally go towards the shot. He now has more room to create, and it's just a mental thing that he's going through.
I figured it out because I'm smart. We talked about he's in his 14th year in the National Hockey League. He's 31. He's not old, but he's got a lot of miles.
Yep.
He's got a lot of miles on him. So, it's just the wear and tear of playing since you're 18 years old can catch up to you. And, the Rangers still have him for 5 more years. And I know it's a lot of people's pressure point when they talk about him online. It's, well, we got 5 years of this guy. This is such a bad contract. Like, you got to root for him. The only thing you could do is root for him. Otherwise, you're not rooting for the team. There's so many. You can expect him to play better. Like, there's rightful criticism for guys like him and guys like Trocheck that is well deserved. But if you're not rooting for the guy to figure it out, go home. Like stop watching the games, stop talking about it. You're just you're a bad fan at the moment.
I think something's up with his back, and I've said
Probably.
that for a while. I think that cross check that he took in the playoffs really did something in his back that he didn't get completely fixed over the summer, and I think that's turned into something mental. Because as much as I'm sold on everything that everyone's saying about the mental side, he's laboring sometimes, and I know if it is a mental thing, it can impact you on the physical side, but it's just too much at some point. Sometimes, like, he can't even, like, I'm noticing he can't even bend over in these puck battles on the boards, and that's why he's losing them in the corner, because he's not even able to, like, get down, or when he's stick handling, he's, like, straight up, and that's why he's not able to make the moves that we've seen him make in the past, because he's not even in, like, an athletic stance. So I think something really happened to him when he took that check in the playoffs. I forget what round that. Do you guys even remember what round
Carolina.
that was in? That was Carolina, right?
Round, yep.
And he immediately came out of that game. He like ran to the bench. Like, I think something happened that they told him over the summer he could basically correct without like a major surgery and maybe with physical therapy. But when you're dealing with a back, it's just I really think something's there. And something that stuck out to me is I listened to Boomer and Gio on my way to work, and we all know Boomer is a big Rangers fan. He was saying, and he's tuned in with the team and he knows people. He was saying that he heard stuff, and this was back when the playoffs were actually going on. He's like, you're not going to hear stories about this stuff till maybe later in the summer, but some of these guys are actually going through some bad stuff. And the reason why no one's saying anything is because everyone's got teams at that point. But he was making it seem that he knew that there were certain Rangers that were going through maybe tougher injuries than we even knew about. And it would not surprise me if that back from Mika, where he took a shot to a spot where you can have a little bit less padding based on how you wear your pads, and you can just be done. Yeah, and you can just be absolutely done.
I would love to get a side-by-side of like 2021 Mika skating versus 2024 Mika skating.
Oh, they're out there.
I'm telling you, and as much
as
what you're saying is correct, and even if it's 99% mental, you just can't tell me that something isn't physical from what you're saying.
There is. And he's overcompensating. It's obvious because this is not a guy that, like, even last year when he wasn't scoring at the rate that we had become accustomed to him scoring, we weren't seeing him just bobble pucks. We weren't seeing him get just like it. He goes into a corner and the guy just pushes him for 1 second. The puck's off his stick. It's just not the Mika Zibanejad that since he got traded here in 2016 that we've come to expect. And it's infuriating to watch because we know. I mean, I keep saying it. Like the 5-goal game, Mika was a thing like that. He didn't have 5 goals every single game, but you noticed him every single night. He was their most dangerous player before Panarin came here. And
I'll say the people that shit talk him the most are the people that were not fans of that team that started watching after they became good.
Yeah.
But I also will say, and Brendan, you weren't here on Thursday when I mentioned this. You don't just lose talent in a year and a half. Like, it doesn't just go away like that.
No.
You don't lose. You're not that talented of a player, and it just go away in the snap of a finger. Like, the logical reason is something has happened. It's not just like this guy turned into a pumpkin, right? Like, you have to use the other side of your brain just every now and then to figure out that, you know, it's something physical or something mental or both. It could very well be his back is still very, you know, not healed from that Brent Burns cross check, and then it triggered something mentally that he can't trust to do.
Yep.
He can't trust to make a move because, you know, he doesn't trust that his back is going to be all right with it. So this is all speculation. Like,
yeah, his back could be fine.
We don't know what this is. Like, we don't know. This is all what we're doing. We know nothing. We're just here to talk about it. But I will always remember 5-goal Mika where I was. It was right before COVID, like unbelievable, like stretch of games, because if you remember that team, like they were in the middle of this absolute heater that they were on, trying to run down a playoff spot. They were like 2 or 3 or 4 points out in March, and they had just beaten Colorado in overtime or what? Right?
They,
Was
they,
it
they
Colorado?
lost. Their last game was a overtime loss to Colorado, but they had
Or-
scored. I think it was
Yeah.
Vucevic scored with like 12 seconds left to force OT.
Yeah. And they were in the middle of this heater that they were on, and then obviously everybody else knows what happens after that. They make the playoffs on a technicality and get stomped by Carolina. But
Good old
those are the
bubble.
fake playoffs, little fake playoffs. Those don't count. But that team was fun. That was a fun team to watch because it was this core of guys
And they were
minus
trying to get back.
exactly.
Like they had that push. There's no push right now, and that's why you guys are saying it's boring hockey to watch because fans feed off of the energy that you see. If the Rangers were 4-10-1 and weren't expected to do anything, but they were trying their best every single, like you could visibly tell that they were pushing. People are not going to be as pissed off as they are now that they're 10-4-1 but look lethargic. It's just in New York, if you're not trying, we will turn on you in an instant. They were getting booed against the San Jose Sharks in that game that they were winning 2-1 at a certain point. Fans were like, what the fuck is going on? Excuse my French. And that's what happens. You need to have that level of play. The results matter, yes, but the way that you're going about the results matter more. And right now, it just looks like across the board, there's just a disinterest in playing regular season hockey.
I will say a funny story about booing at the Sabres game on Thursday. There was a minute left in the third period. It was a tie game. Face off in the Sabres zone, and Oscar Sundqvist goes to the net, sort of kind of gets pushed, but ends up running over Devin Levi, and they get a penalty for goaltender interference. The Sabres have the puck, and they start ragging it in their own zone. And I'm sitting up in the 300s, which is usually not where the most intelligent fans sit. It's usually where everybody's kind of been boozing all day. But they're just booing the shit out of them. Like for 30 seconds, they're booing the shit out of them. They're like, there's 30 seconds. Like, you got to go. What the hell are you doing? You got the extra man. And then something clicked where everyone was like, oh, this is a smart thing to do.
Yeah,
like this is what they have to do. Yeah. You get the 4-on-3 and OT. They kill the next 30 seconds. They killed that full minute. The Blues never touch the puck. They start overtime with the man advantage, and I think it was Rasmus Dahlin ended up scoring the OT winner on the power play. In that game, actually, also they had one of those goaltender interference calls that, to somebody that doesn't necessarily watch the NHL intently was like, how the hell is that goalie interference? And I answered, like, somebody asked me that the next day because they knew I was at the game. And it was one of those instances, the same one that John Carlson went through for Washington a couple days ago, where he just kind of skated into the crease, didn't really touch the goalie, but kind of got in his way. And I'm sitting there like, everybody else around me, and it's probably because they're Sabres fans, are sitting there like, oh, he didn't touch him. It's not goaltender interference. And I'm sitting there like, you guys are going to be pissed when they announce this because he willingly skated into the crease, willingly went in there, didn't make an effort to get out, and then the puck ends up in the net. Like, you can't. That's just the rule. It's a stupid rule, but it's the rule.
That's what people were saying that when the Trocheck goalie interference against San Jose, which would have been Fox's first goal of the year, so he looked pretty pissed off too. But Trocheck skated right through Blackwood's stick, right, and the puck wound up beating him 5-hole. So everybody's like, "Oh, that doesn't impact it. He had time to get set." Well, he doesn't have a stick anymore. That's goalie interference, and everybody around me was like, "Oh, it's going to stand. We got a goal." I'm like, you guys are going to be really pissed off when the ref comes on the mic because that's clearly goalie interference. I saw it live, and my girlfriend was next to me celebrating. I'm like, you might want to sit down for this one because this is not standing. And it's just those plays where they actually go the right way. Okay, I understand the rule. But then you have certain situations where it just becomes a debacle, and that's why people aren't a fan of it anymore. But
can we put like a time limit on when you can challenge an offsides, like
I would
6
love
seconds,
that.
6 seconds after the zone entry happens to a goal? Because like if that happens and it's 5 minutes after a goal or 5 minutes before a goal, like come on, it's ridiculous.
I would push it to 15 seconds because that's still to me the ensuing play. Because then you have the zone entry that would have been offsides and. You get time to set up. But once we get to like the 30 to 45 seconds, if you haven't gotten the puck out, there's other issues there that are going on besides the offsides. And it's just, it ruins the flow of the game. But whatever. All right. So Rangers 4-game road trip starts tonight in Seattle. They go from Seattle to Vancouver to Calgary to Edmonton. It's 4 of the 5 games that as Steven mentioned, got them going last year. The game that's not going to be played is Winnipeg. They obviously hosted Winnipeg last week. They play them again in March, and it's the road trip where we hope we see more consistent play, because I could tell you right now, going against Vancouver and Edmonton, if they play the defense that they've been playing the last 3 weeks, they are going to get lit up offensively. So I think that going on the road helps them. We got to remember, despite everything that we've talked about in this episode, they are 5-1 on the road. They are historically a very good road team. They tighten up defensively on the road, and that is something that I think might serve them well. This is a 4-game road trip that is coming at a great time. So let's see how they start tonight against Seattle, who is coming off a win against the Islanders last night. So on the second leg of a back-to-back, the Rangers are the fresh team, and let's see what happens. Any final thoughts, boys? Any predictions?
Well, let's give the predictions. We sort of did on
I'll say
Thursday.
before we stream next Thursday, we got 2 games and we will be 1-1.
Oh, I forgot that those 2 games. I was going to go the whole road trip. Let's do these 2 games. Vancouver, historically bad at home right now, keeping the puck out of their own net. They have one of the best goals against averages on the road, one of the worst, if not the worst, at home. They're 3-3-3 at home. Seattle's 6-3-0 at home. Let's give me 2-0. I'm not one to do that, but I think being on the road, being away from Madison Square Garden, you're better than Seattle. You can beat Vancouver. They're a team that kind of took it to you last year a little bit. If you remember that home game at Madison Square Garden in, I believe it was January, where they just ran them out of the building. Seattle, Vancouver, give me 2 wins. I'm not one to usually do it, but screw it. We're living on the edge today.
I'm going to actually hop on that with you. I like it. I think if the lighting in Seattle's arena can work this time, that was the last time the Rangers were there. They had one side of the ice that had no lighting. But I think that Seattle coming off the back-to-back, the Rangers obviously are the fresher team. They need to start playing better. I think that with the injury to Edel, it's almost like a wake-up call for the other guys in the lineup to produce a little bit more. So I like them tonight. And then the Vancouver game, I could see it going to overtime, so I could say 1-0-1, but I think that they get the job done in Vancouver as well. I don't think that Vancouver is going to play enough defense to stop the Rangers from scoring. So even if that game winds up being a barn burner, I do like the Rangers in that one as well. But yeah, we've seen this team play now for a couple of weeks where we have no clue what the hell is going to happen. We're just all watching it like you are and trying to see if they can figure it out at any point. The one thing that's pissed me off this entire show is those ticket prices on the screen. Whether you see $42, $39, and then St. Louis at the Rangers $150.
I'll tell you, that is deceiving, because I paid $35 a ticket for my seats in Buffalo all the way at the top. 2 beers was $40, and like hot dog or something was like $15. So if they might not get you in the ticket price, they're gonna get you some way. Parking was $25. Like they'll get you another way if the ticket prices are cheap.
I mean, I paid $17 per beer at MSG against the Sharks after paying $120 per ticket. And then I got a chicken tender and fry thing that was $17. So you're telling me, like, who makes these freaking prices, man? It's just, dude, it's unfortunate.
I'm telling you, that was the thing with Buffalo. I'm sitting there and I'm like, you're charging me basically $22 for one beer. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
It's insane.
Ridiculous. Prices are getting out of control.
Oh my God, yeah. I did want to mention one thing.
I gotta hop off, fellas. I gotta hop off though. I will see you guys.
Go Jets.
I'll let you finish.
Think about, have the Rangers won an OT game yet this year? They've only played one, right? Was it just Utah?
Yeah, they've only been to OT once.
So it's about time they win an overtime game.
It's about time they go to overtime. It seems like all these games are just one way or the other, right? There's even though at the last minute 20 of the San Jose game on Thursday, I thought they were about to yield that because they couldn't do anything. Shesterkin shot that puck, the entire arena stood up. And I was like, if this happens, and I saw that the Sharks defenseman, for some reason, in a game where you're down 2 goals, was standing at his own circle. I was like, what the hell, man? Because that was actually going in. But, but we'll see what happens. They're due for an OT game. They're due for an OT win. But they're also due to just start playing better. Too good of a team to not play better at this point. and it's just there's too many people going bad at once. It's going to snap eventually, and they're going to start to figure it out. No better time than a West Coast trip to get everything back together like how it happened last year. So we shall see how that goes.
It starts tonight. Positivity. Believe.
Yes, I do agree. I do think that tonight they will play significantly better. Even though I might not stay up to the end of that game because, we all got work tomorrow on the East Coast, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's a good start to this road trip in Seattle.
Listen,
and we'll be back next Thursday.
I'm working tonight. My shift doesn't end tonight till midnight, so I will be, tuned into that game.
You'll be scoreboard watching. I'll watch the first period and then see how tired I am. I'm an old man at this point. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning on this Sunday. Enjoy some football and then enjoy some Rangers hockey later on, and we'll see you next Thursday.
See you guys.